totally different from what usually happens on my math exams. Usually, remember that graph we just looked at with house prices? Imagine that flipped vertically. That's what I usually see on my exams, with low scores on the left, high scores on the right. I usually get skewed graphs like this on my exams. When I see something like this, I'm like, what the hell happened? But the way I have my Excel grade book set up, and you guys will see this after each exam, I bring statistics to class about what happened on the exams. When you look at that, Excel automatically calculated the average. Now up there, it's a different symbol than we're used to. This little guy right here is the Greek letter mu. That's mu, that's the population average. X bar, remember what X bar is? It's the average of or the average of a, what do you study because you can't study the entire population? It's your sample. It's your sample. Now the reason I can call that a population is because I only had 63 students in both Math 95 classes. That's easy enough for me to measure because I can actually get 63 grades, put it in Excel and call it good. So I can call it mu. But it's still the same thing. I added up the scores and divided by 63. So the average score on the exam was 71. The median score on the exam was 78. How good a job do those two numbers do of describing what actually happened on that exam? How good a job? Sarah's saying, I don't like those numbers too much. If I told you that the class average on this exam was a 71, how many of you would have drawn that? Right? I think most of us would have drawn something like maybe this.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. I'm guessing something along those lines.
It makes it sound like most of the people passed with a C, but here you have this huge number that didn't pass at all.
Oh, Athena, that was wonderful. When you hear the average is a 71, the implication is that's a typical score. Yeah. The implication is that's a typical score. That's the whole idea of center, is trying to describe an entire data set with one number. And you can always do that. You can always describe an entire data set with one number. But you shouldn't always do that. Yes, the average of that data set is 71. But how would you, if you didn't want to use the average of 71, how would you describe what happened on this exam? And don't feel limited by just using one number or one letter grade. How would you describe what happened on this exam? If you had to talk to your neighbor about this, or talk to somebody who's not in a math class about what rules students did in fall 2009, how would you describe what just happened?
Words I'm not supposed to use.
Okay. Well, I'll edit them out later. I'll just put a little bleed sound over them. No, because what? Because why, Athena? Why?
Because obviously something went very wrong.
Well, I wouldn't call this very wrong.
For half the group to not understand, that's very
Well, it's a
bad.
third. Let's not be hyperbolic.
It seems like
It's a third. Come on. Good Lord.
Okay,
Okay, I'm putting one more prerequisite up next week. Go, Cassie, go.
The 60 to 70 isn't very good either, so I mean, that's still 30 people who do crappy.
Sure, but what
That's
gets
how
my
I look at it.
attention?
Thank you.
That gets my attention.
Yeah.
See, now, we can look at it glass half full, half empty. Yeah, a third of the class got a 50 and a 60. That's garbage. However, almost half the class got a 80 or higher.
yeah.
So, lemonade versus sucking on a raw lemon. But what really gets my attention are these two spikes right there. That tells me that I really am not really looking at one population. I'm seeing probably two groups of people. Is that what you're going to say, Lucas?
Well, I was gonna say it seems like the morning class can't get the math, and then the other class can.
Because I'm so good at the afternoon.
So the people, I don't know what it is.
I'm
So,
kidding, dude. And actually, I checked that, and it was distributed evenly.
Oh, really?
I checked. That's the first thing I checked. It's two classes, and there was no correlation between early to late and performance. It was all pretty much evenly mixed. So what I ended up doing was I surveyed them. Like, what the hell happened? What the hell? Why did 1/3 of my exam get a 60, or 1/3 of my students get a 60 or below? And I heard all kinds of things, like I've been sick for 2 weeks. I had I heard that for a couple of them, but I heard all kinds of stuff I hadn't thought of. I had 4 exams that day. I used to give my exams on week 5 and week 10, and then finals week. And I realized that's when most people at COCC give their exams. Hence, your guys' exams are now week 4 and week 7, off of 5 and 10. Just to move them away from what I perceive to be when most people are giving exams. I'm like, well, hell, I never would have known that had I not stopped to ask what was going on. So that's, again, statistics sometimes creates more questions than it answers. Like this. I sit back at my desk going, what the hell? But then I get the answers. Now, some of it was I didn't study, for sure. But some of it was legitimate. Like, you can't properly prepare for 4 exams in one day, no matter when you start. I mean, honestly. So So anyway, basically, when you've got this multimodal kind of situation where you've got more than one mode, ignore the average and the median in most parts, in most cases. Unless the medians and modes are very close to, if it's a symmetric multimodal data set, maybe you're okay. But if it's an asymmetric or separated multimodal data set, the average is going to be between the two modes. And it goes back to what Athena said about the typical, when you hear 71, it makes it sound like most people got a 71. It's exactly right. It's exactly right, which is not what happened here. Which is definitely not what happened here. So you have to be careful when you're dealing with this data to make sure you actually pull it correctly. So this is how you would deal with like quantitative data. So all the data up here today so far has been quantitative. Exam scores, house prices, LDL levels, numbers of keys. I want to address very briefly, and not for very long, because we don't play with too much qualitative data. Qualitative data. We haven't looked at any of that today, but we did look at it on the first day when I made you guys do a bunch of math problems in your head. I said 5 plus 1, 4 plus 2, 3 plus 3, blah, 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 blah. Think of a vegetable. What was the average vegetable chosen in this class?
Carrot.
Without a hesitation, you guys said carrot. I said, what's the average vegetable? And nobody wrinkled their nose and said, how can you average vegetables? Because you went to your 3 measures of center and you ruled out the actual literal average, because you can't add a carrot to a broccoli and divide by 2 and get. You also can't median vegetables, because you can't put them in any kind of meaningful order. So your mind's filtered down and went straight to mode.
You forgot about GMOs.
Nice.
I did. You're right. I did.
Just say
We
half
can
fish, half corn.
make a carrot into
Oh, I
broccoli
see
now.
what you're
Yeah, that's right.
We can make a carrot mixed with a broccoli.
Fine,
We'll make it taste good, damn it.
divided by 2 too.
Well played, sirs. Well played. But the it was nice is you guys processed right to mode. And when you have qualitative data, that's the only choice you have, really. You can't do anything else. I pick on this only because people try. They try to make qualitative data quantitative on things like Likert scales and student evals. Strongly disagree, 1. Strongly agree, 7. No. Strongly disagree is strongly disagree. Strongly agree is strong. That's like saying if I get a 1 and a 7, I'm neutral. That's ridiculous. That person that voted 1 has very specific reasons for voting 1. And the person that voted 7 has very specific reasons for voting 7. And they don't cancel each other. You get data from both of them. You get data from both of them. It's not to say it's equivalent. You can't make it 0 out. Oh, great. That's like saying if you stick your head in the fridge and your feet in the oven, you're fine. No, you're not fine. It's qualitatively annoying.
You have a
All
lot
right.
of animosity towards that survey thing, don't you?
Towards what?
That survey thing. The
Oh,
class
I have a problem with it.